So, I think I said all I had to say in the release that we put out. I've had a wonderful time as mayor of the city. Made some significant changes for the better. And are there any questions?
So what precipitated your decision to announce this today?
I wanted to wait until we were sometime into late July, but I also wanted to make the announcement early enough so that anyone who might consider running for mayor had adequate time to prepare.
Was part of this decision to reaffirm to Wisconsin voters that you're committed to the governor's race?
That's not the entire reason, but that is part of it.
In your statement, you kind of mentioned your support for Rose Conway. Is that we're going to see an endorsement down the road, or?
We may. I would be perfectly comfortable endorsing her. She has not asked for an endorsement. But when I look at the candidates who've announced, I see her as clearly being head and shoulders far superior in every way.
When did you make up your mind that you were not going to run?
I don't know. It was a few months ago.
A few months ago?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you just don't have anything more to offer, or why?
I guess I've always felt that between 6 and 8 years is the appropriate time in this office.
But you've been in at 22.
Well, at one time. At one time. And I have said before, after my first 2 tenures, I think there's really great value in leaving office for a while and then returning. Though I can assure you that there will not be a third sequel.
Can you talk a bit more about how this decision regarding running for a re-election as mayor was affected by your candidacy for governor? What's the interplay?
It's just one factor, but I can tell you this: if I was not running for governor, this would still be the last term.
Why?
Because 8 years in this office for one person is long enough.
There was
Though I might say, some of the changes I anticipate will happen in 2019 around here will be pretty exciting.
tension with the council. I think you could see grow perhaps over the past 2 years. Did that in any way influence or weigh on your decision not to run for re-election?
If anything, the change in direction of the council going into 2019 would have pointed the needle towards running.
What is your priority for the transition in terms of passing on what you've done to the next mayor?
That's to be determined when the election is held and the next mayor is selected, and then we'll have the usual period of time if I'm mayor at that time.
Did you set out to, did you accomplish what you set out to when you first ran for in 2011?
I think a significant change has taken place in the areas where I wanted focus. We don't have the conclusive data, and in some instances we won't get it till the 2020 census. But Madison is in a different league now than it was in 2011.
Well, can you just talk about that a little more?
Well, for one thing, we've made enormous strides in terms of the economy becoming more inclusive. We've made enormous strides in regards to progress in housing that I wanted to see, moving from being a community focused on temporary shelter to one that is committed to permanent affordable housing solutions. We've made progress in regards to the transportation system to the point now where we can't get all the people on the buses who want to ride. I also see a lot of progress in regards to how we're treating violence as a public health issue, and I'm very proud of the changes we've seen in the homicide rate, where we were looking at really bad numbers in 2016. By August of 2017, we had set a new record. And since the announcement almost a year ago of the murder of the woman in the house her husband exploded, who had already been dead for some time, that since that time we've had 2 homicides, only one of which involved a young African American at both ends of the gun. And I think there's a lot more to be done there, but I think we have figured it out on how to deal with it. And I, of course, would recommend people to look at the research of Professor Dave Kennedy at the John Jay School of Criminal Justice in New York, and Professor Philip Sharkey, who's recently published a book about the importance of true community-based organizations in changing economies and neighborhood values. So, in those areas, the only place where we've seen major setbacks are the 200 bills that the legislature adopted with Governor Walker's support, basically undermining local control and making life more challenging in our state. I mean, it's absolute nonsense that when employers are setting a standard that they want public transit, bicycles, and pedestrian access to their businesses, we saw our state legislature, we saw our governor sign a bill where we can no longer acquire right-of-way for sidewalks. I mean, this is insanity. Absolutely nuts. And, there's other related issues where we've got big problems in regards to the state's economy and the local economy, not the least of which has to do with the trade wars and what we're seeing happening to everybody from milk producers to the folks in the cheese industry and all the related food processors around here, and then all the rest of us who are dependent upon them. That is something that deeply concerns me about the next few years.
So, Mr. Mayor, if you don't win this race for governor, if you don't win the primary, what's next for you after this?
I don't deal in hypotheticals like that.
What do you hope is next for you? What do you want to do?
Governor,
So with the fundraising numbers
serve
that
the
have-
people of this state.
with the fundraising numbers that came out, how are you going to adjust your strategy for that candidacy?
First of all, those were the numbers as of the filing date, and secondly, I'm certainly not going to divulge any strategy.
Are you saying you've raised a lot more since the filing date?
I'm not going to answer any questions on strategy.
Can you say whether you've put in a lot of your own money?
I'm not going to answer those questions, okay?
So those fundraising numbers showed you 6th among Democratic candidates in the amount raised in the 6-month period. It showed you 6th in terms of cash on hand heading into from July 1 going forward. Is that a problem for your campaign in terms of?
I'm not going to give you any discussion about fundraising, except to say that there is a difference between a name recognition poll and the kind of polling that we conducted, and I know what our polling says.
What do you think your legacy as mayor will be?
Well, I used to say we built the bike path around Lake Monona for $50,000. It has no moving parts, doesn't break down, and it provides pleasure and enjoyment to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people every year. Haven't thought much beyond that.
What's your proudest accomplishment? I mean,
I don't know. I'm still mayor. I'm breathing. We'll see.
Mayor, I know debt service has been a big issue for you,
Yes.
particularly in these past 2 terms. Do you think the city has done adequate work on controlling the debt service?
Well, we've done a far better job since I came back into office, but it certainly doesn't meet the standards, the expectations that the city deserves in regards to its fiscal responsibility. 15, 16% of the operating budget going towards debt service is acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable by Madison standards, and I wish we were down around 13%. Under 13% ought to be our goal. I'm pleased that at least the trajectory that I inherited, which was being close to 20% by now, was not reached, but it is going to be a struggle for the next mayor, and hopefully a struggle that the next council will embrace to set a goal to stabilize at around 15, 16%, and then work our way down to 13%.
what's at the top of your list for things to try and get done before you wrap up your time in office?
Well, certainly next year's budget goes to the top of the list, and some new initiatives we may see in that budget, which will come out when that budget comes out.
Anything outside of the budget? Any personal accomplishments you want to get done before you're...
Well, it will be tied to the budget, but certainly dealing with violence, substance abuse, all these things related to safety and the health of the people of the community. Those are the highest priorities.
Madison still has, MMSD still has some of the worst achievement gaps in the state. What's your advice to the next mayor of how to tackle that issue?
Well, I'm not sure in this state that any municipality can tackle that by itself. And it goes to the fact that we don't have decent financial support for our public schools, particularly financial support that is tied to poverty. And I would add to that access to the internet. You cannot learn these days without access to the internet, and a cell phone device doesn't cut it. You've got to be working on a large screen where you can do the research and do the word processing and do the reading. We've introduced the out-of-school time program in collaboration with the school district that has led to our discovering the needs of kids in the community, and now we're taking steps to bring greater equity. Kids spend over 2/3 of their waking hours outside of the classroom. And we know about how kids sometimes slip and fall back during the summer. These are all critical issues. But I also think that Superintendent Cheatham has done a good job. I think there is sufficient progress that's been made. Obviously, there's more that needs to be done. But we, the district, and the community are going in the right direction in terms of these kids' education. The other thing that we've done is we've significantly introduced greater summer job opportunities for the kids of Madison. And one of the things we know is that when a kid has a successful experience in a summer job, it's almost like immunizing that kid for 18 months in regards to their future behavior and their academic performance. Kids with a successful summer job do well that next academic year. And I think one of the things that we're learning and we're very proud of is some of these kids are then invited to work part-time during the school year. And believe it or not, when they're forced to be more disciplined in organizing their time, their academics improve.
Do you think this announcement today will help your in the primary in terms of just the turnout in Madison?
I don't know. I think what's more important, if we're talking about the primary, is focusing on the shameful and treasonous behavior of President Trump, and that we've got a governor in this state who just can't seem to open his mouth except whenever he wants to brag about numbers and how big things are. That to me is going to have the greatest bearing on that primary and the general election.
Are you confident that you're going to be the next governor of Wisconsin?
I don't think anyone can say that they're confident in answer to a question like that. I know that Scott Walker can't, and he's been governor for 7.5 years.
What do you think your chances are?
I'll leave that between myself and my own private speculations.
What would you say to voters who might be seeing you leave or not seek re-election for one public office, but seek another public office?
Well, what I've been saying since January, of all the candidates, and that's not just the Democratic primary, but also Scott Walker, I am the one who's got the proven ability as a manager and has the greatest success in terms of universally supplying answers for the issues that people think are important. We're talking about an economic system that simply has not been fair. And it's one that has, it's an economic system that has damaged the lives of very hardworking people who deserve better. They deserve answers, and they deserve an executive who is going to put their expectations ahead of political career. Obviously, I have no further ambition than to serve as governor, and I come to that with 22 years as mayor of Madison, 25 years in the private sector, jobs ranging from small businesses to one of the largest corporations in the state. And when you look at what I've done in regards to transportation and being responsible about budgeting, what I've done in terms of affordable housing, all that work. I was flattered at one point when a high school kid had looked at my campaign platform and then years later looked at the results and said, you know, you accomplished most everything you wanted to do. Well, it changes while you're in office, but you know, you take the situation from yesterday and our discussion about the county's effort to dump the jurisdiction on maintaining 2 county highways on us. I know it doesn't sit well in the affected neighborhoods. I know it may cost me votes in that corridor on the east side between Buckeye and Cottage Grove roads. But I am not going to be intimidated. I'm not going to bend. I am going to remain vigilant in doing what is right. And I suppose I might have even better numbers than I've got in a candidacy for governor if I'd made those kinds of compromises over the years. But I couldn't live with myself.
Do you think the size of the Democratic field right now is hindering the party's chances come the general election?
No, that's 8 times as many voices exposing the Walker administration and the way Scott Walker's become a sock puppet for Donald Trump. The more people hear that and realize how devastating it's been to this state, the better.
You mentioned that you completed a lot of the things you wanted to do. Is there anything you didn't that you wish you had more time and that you hope the next mayor prioritizes?
I wish we had more data about what's going on in our community and our country so that we could make better decisions. And that gets me into another issue. One of the most horrendous things taking place in this country right now, and again, I'll bring in Scott Walker's name in complicity with the Trump administration, is the fact that we are going to, in a part, defund the 2020 census. It is so important in terms of making decisions, in terms of allocation of resources, that we understand who is living in our communities, who is living in our states, and that we get apportionment right in terms of representation. It's absolutely ludicrous that one political party might get a majority of votes for a legislative body and only get 1/3 of the seats. So we've got to get focused in the next 2 years on the 2020 census and what it means. And I would say to the next mayor, of all the things that you're going to, of all the obligations you make, which you're probably not prepared for, when you take office, you better be ready for the census.
Would you like to see another man as mayor? Would you like to see a woman?
I don't think that's as important as, I don't think that's as important as the qualities that they bring to the office. Their judgment, their sincerity, their trustworthiness, their ability to put the people of the community ahead of their own political security.
What will we hear next from your campaign for governor? Will you be doing any paid media, any advertisements, anything like that?
Well, I invite all of you in the next 45 minutes to pack your gear and meet us at the Art Center in Monroe, where 6 of the candidates will appear. As usual, since it's not being televised, Tony Evers won't show up. But I think it'll be a real interesting debate tonight.
But any word on advertising, any sort of paid media, anything like that?
It's coming.
What does this do to projects like the public market, Judge Doyle, Oscar Mayer, those sorts of things?
I think if we get the right mayor, the right leadership, they should continue smoothly. I keep looking at your T-shirt. I just bought a 2-volume set of Johnny Cash, about 2.5 hours of his music, including Folsom Prison Live. Bought it locally on State Street.
There it is.
I encourage everybody to go down to B-side. I rarely endorse a company, but I picked that up along with a 3-volume set of the best of, oh my God, him too.
I feel like a lot of us can't picture a retired Paul Soglin.
Well, governor will do just fine. I mean, if you're trying to say, what are your plans? My plans are to be the state's next governor.
What about 2020?
Well, I'd be governor then, wouldn't I?
And maybe presidential contender? Will
No, I think, no, that's enough. By the way, the 3-volume set was Ray Charles. So, I mean, the combination of Ray Charles and Johnny Cash is just perfect. It's a great way of driving around the state.
Just one last one. How old are you, Mayor Soglin?
You want me to say it?
I don't want to print the wrong one.
He's a very young 73.
Very young.
Or as I told somebody else, I am the youngest candidate running for governor.
Really?
I think you have to explain that.
I'm younger than the rest of them. I mean, did any of them do something like Starting Block? Did any of them, when Madison was embarrassed by Boulder as being a city for millennials, accomplish what I've done? I mean, why did Zendesk come here? They came here because they were looking for a city where the kinds of young people who were being employed in California would find exciting and vibrant. And that gets to another issue. Virtually every county in this state, and of course Dane is an exception, is missing its millennials, its 20-year-olds. Right now, if you take the population of the U.S. and you have a balanced distribution by age, you should have as many 20-year-olds as you have 50-year-olds. And in virtually every county in this state, there are significantly fewer 20-year-olds than there are 50-year-olds, which means that we're losing a generation and their children for 2 reasons. One is the quality of the jobs, and the other is the quality of the public schools, and that needs to be fixed. Nobody took the bait when I talked about Scott Walker and the numbers, but I just do want to say that he thinks that, I don't know how many of you took quantitative and qualitative chemistry, but there's a difference between quantitative measures and quality measures. Not that quantitative measurements don't at times tell a story. I mean, when you build 1,000 units of affordable housing, that really says something. But when you boast about the number of jobs and you're reaching it because most people entering the workforce find that they need to get 2 jobs, that's not quality. I'm sure a lot of people holding 3 jobs would be more than happy to work 1 job at a decent wage rate with health insurance and a pension. Or when you set about the goal of setting record production for milk, someone's got to realize that if there's no market for that milk, you're going to set another record. And that's farm bankruptcies, at least in the western half of the state. So what we need is leadership that points to quality. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do as mayor. If you look at, for example, Rethke or some of the housing that we've done, it's far different than the subsidized housing that was produced when we were under some old federal mandates. which we now are free of as long as we can get the tax credits. If you look at what we're doing in regards to the millions of dollars the city's investing in the lakes, we're talking about the quality of the lakes. And hopefully in another decade we'll start seeing the results. So I'd better, is anybody going to Greene County with me? Look, invite you all. I'll drive. I've got my own personal car. It's not the city car, so there's no problems there. I think you ought to come on down there. It's going to be fun tonight, and you'll probably see some things in the debate that we haven't seen yet. So, all right, thank you.